All right, looks like we're good to go. So a little Q&A session here with Adam Quigley, who's the head athletic trainer of the LA Galaxy 2 in the USL. So we'll kind of kick things off right away. My name's Matt Robinson. Currently intern at University of Denver with women's soccer. So first question here, could you explain your journey you took to get to your current position with the LA Galaxy 2?
Yeah, of course. For starters, it started with youth soccer. I played soccer growing up, played in college at Salisbury University, and that was really where my passion lied. That's what I got up to do every morning and went to sleep thinking about. And so through the years between undergrad playing soccer, I was never able to work with soccer as a clinical rotation because I was always in season. So I continued on with American football. Went to University of Arizona for an internship with their football program, to South Carolina, to USC for grad school. And while I was there, actually in between working in an orthopedic clinic and with South Carolina football, I would work on the side with a soccer academy called South Carolina United Bantams, or South Carolina United Bantams was the semi-pro team that I worked with as well. And that's where I really realized that it was not work by any means for me. And it was just opportunity and supporting these youth athletes as well as these semi-pro guys either in college or looking to get to the next level. And it just came kind of as second nature. So I stayed within the football realm and went down to the New Orleans Saints as a seasonal assistant. But while I was there, kept the conversation going with a few different teams within soccer, not from a standpoint of looking to get in the door there, but more so, this is something that I'm interested in. You all work in that setting and you have a passion and tremendous knowledge for there. And so I was just, kind of learning and going with the flow of different things I could learn and grow with, both within the American football setting as well as soccer. So ultimately from New Orleans, took a job with San Antonio FC. So finally got into the soccer world. And for me as a ex-athlete, if you will, leaving the college game, playing and working in it, I personally needed to separate the two, chapters of my life, if you will. And after years in American football, really noticed that when I put my mind to something, whether it was in football or in soccer, and had it from a passion side and not just a knowledge base, it made it that much better. So it allowed me to connect with the athletes at a deeper level, with the management, with the coaches, other athletic trainers. And so at San Antonio for 2 years as the head athletic trainer there, it really put into context, one, the word context was very, very big in what I learned, and keeping the context of the situation and environment at, the priority of everything. And so after 2 years at the USL independent team level with San Antonio FC, through conversation and collaboration of PSATs, or Professional Soccer Athletic Trainer Society, at their meeting, was able to meet and learn alongside all of these MLS athletic trainers, as well as academy athletic trainers, US soccer athletic trainers. And it was incredible. And being able to realize and acknowledge myself for being in that room and knowing what I knew and having the experiences that I had, it was like, yeah, is my next goal the MLS? Is it a USL, a second team of an MLS team? It was just, I wanted to learn, I wanted to grow it and continue developing my skills. And LA Galaxy is the opportunity that came forth. I've been tremendously amazed and wowed, honestly, by the organization as a whole, from medical staff to performance. And I was here for 6 weeks for preseason and our first game before we went into quarantine. So I got a good glimpse of how things worked naturally, and now how things work when we have no other choice besides to, get the work done and work as a collaborative team. So that's, I guess, the short summary of how I am here. But in summary, it's really, I knew what I wanted to learn, or at least what I was open to learning, and I just continued following, you know, that path of
Okay.
education, that path of
Okay.
working with mentorship and people along the I guess lines of myself and what I was looking to create, and ultimately, moved out to Los Angeles, which as a kid from Maryland, I was not expecting that.
That's awesome. What do you take away from being a collegiate athlete and kind of applying that to your practice?
So first and foremost, I would say connection with the athletes. It's like having an athlete talk to, let's say, a supermodel of how to walk on the catwalk. Like it just doesn't. The context isn't really there. So for me, being an athlete, being in their shoes and being able to connect with them of why we're doing this and what their actual goal is, I think has gone a long way. And being able to, with rehabilitation, with cueing, with just going through the day to day, personally knowing the process, although not at a professional level, but although similar context and process, I learned of how it creates a common denominator, if you will, of connection. And so it's not just we're focusing on the sport or we're focusing on the injury, but I'm able to focus on where they're coming from. Because, when I was in college athlete, I sprained my ankle and had, my adductors and hip flexor issues. So I, can really connect with where they are. And it also comes down to, I think it's really provides support with connecting with the coaches as well as in rehab. I feel that as a soccer athlete in my past, knowing the ins and outs of rehab and where to go with different things, to keep it sport specific or even athlete specific, right? So like if there's a defensive mid, a number 6, they can play the game. If you have 3 different players, they play the game 3 different ways. So if we're rehabbing in a certain way, you can certainly kind of critique it or modify it to be for that specific athlete. So I think that really comes a long way with just learning the game and knowing the game well.
That's very cool. It's taken me about 4 years to develop a mediocre touch, so that's that'll be helpful in the world now.
If anything, it gives you credit. It gave me credibility within the soccer world that if someone pinged the ball in, I could actually settle it. So if anything, that's the top goal priority as a soccer athletic trainer.
Hey, Adam, Wafaa from Texas Tech Women's Soccer here. You kind of mentioned a lot of places that you've been, right? So what advice would you give to a young professional that wants to get into the professional setting and wants to kind of build on what they've already done?
So I would say first and foremost, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So that's something I've really focused on. And with that being said, keeping my head down and focused on what I'm up to, the team that I'm working with. There's especially in professional sports or even in collegiate, there's so many distractions that go on. And sometimes we call them distractions. Sometimes we just call them life, right? Relationships, families. It's really your perception. But keeping that goal or vision of mine at the forefront of all of my decisions. So from a student perspective, reach out and connect with people, not from a benefit that I want to talk to you to get a job at the LA Galaxy, but look, stuff and you have experiences that I haven't had yet. So can we share and have kind of a common conversation? Because for me, I love doing this type of work, spreading knowledge. How much I know, I'm by no means an expert, but I do have experience. And so sharing even those little like small achievements or small wins in my life and small learning moments, I think that actually they can provide some great steps in the foundation. So back to the first part of how you do one thing is how you do everything, is take pride in everything that you do. If you're taping an ankle, if you're making water bottles, if you're writing a rehab plan, the beauty in what we do in creating a structure environment for athletes to be successful in is such an incredible opportunity. when we view it as a job that we have to wake up, oh man, like that player got injured again. Awesome. Now athletic trainers are needed, right? If we were to go through work every day and not have any injuries, you better be as we were talking earlier, you better be a graphic designer, be able to make these PDF rehab documents, presentations. And so viewing everything as an opportunity to learn and to grow, I think is a very, very big part of my philosophy. And even that, building a philosophy, working with your mentors, working with your colleagues about what your philosophy is, and not just kind of stepping up to the plate swinging, but actually having a strategy of what you're looking to accomplish.
That's a lot of good information. I think a lot of people have dreams of becoming, professional athletic trainers in any setting. And I think those are definitely things you could take away from, and apply it to your own setting. So.
Totally.
Do you want to go along with the next one on that tier 1?
Oh, for sure. You kind of talked about COVID-19 and how you were talking about how it's changed everything. So, how are you guys dealing with it? I know you talked a little bit about, before we got on the call, about how we're starting to practice it, a little bit of stuff like that. So how have you guys dealt with it, and how has your organization looked at the return to play stuff for that?
So from an LA Galaxy first team standpoint, it's MLS driven. So working within an MLS 2 team, I just listen and focus on what the first team is doing and how I can modify that and implement it into a second team standpoint. The USL has also come out with their own return to play protocol. So it's kind of managing the expectations between the two, and that we're not stepping out of line for either, to make, all parties happy. But working within the management, working within, our medical performance department, it's been just a ton of collaboration. Myself, I'm new. Our director of performance and sports medicine, Phil Hayward, he's new as well. So this has been an incredible opportunity to really manage and learn about each other, our work ethics, what we care about. We've been doing presentations on, different protocols or kind of background literature reviews to see, almost as an off season, when you go into an off season, you're like, man, I want to, do this CEU or put together this Alter G protocol or program or something. But then we start to manage the athletes again, and then preseason begins, and it's like, oh, where did the time go? So we've been very diligent and focused on, not only where we're going to be when we come out of this quarantine, but what have we accomplished as a staff? Who are we as a staff? Like, have we built a culture, an environment where we know and can work alongside each other better? And so it's been managing fitness and performance, not looking at maintaining game fitness, but you can try, right? It's certainly an effort, but to limit the detraining or deconditioning. I can speak from a second team standpoint. And so managing that, and then just keeping these guys tuned in and concentrated on what we're doing. Our team is made up of 17 to 23, 24-year-olds. So these are guys that are still in, online high school. They may be in online college. They may not be. And so managing expectations and just supporting them in whatever we can do to keep them fit, to keep them injury-free. So when we get back to the reintegration phase, where we hit the ground running.
How are you guys managing injuries if they do happen right now during this time?
Great question. So it's dependent on the injury and the situation. So the actual protocol or legislation, if you will, that came out from the MLS and USL is to treat it, telehealth wise, unless it's like totally necessary and almost mandatory that you need to be in person. So let's say a low back spasm, right? If there's a low back spasm, is that something I need to physically be there and massage and work on manual therapy, core techniques, etc.? Or is it something that I can work with the athlete, maybe make up a rehab plan, a PDF and send over? or if it's, you know, a longer term rehab. If it's an ACL, if it's, let's say, a shoulder labrum repair, that's something that may actually need hands-on and one-on-one rehab. So in that case, it is deemed, you know, okay to do at the house, though. So we haven't had really any access to the facility to keep that safe and to remain in our own, I guess, safe havens and where we are. So it's certainly been an opportunity. As I said, it's not a hurdle. It's an opportunity to see, you know, if I'm evaluating someone over FaceTime or over, you know, a Zoom call, I can't use my hands, and I can demonstrate, but it's not as easy. So like, it's actually really worked on my cueing and on my what I say and the direction of that. So I feel like once we do come back, like some of my cueing and language will actually be much more direct in meaning, rather than, you know, a bunch of long-winded explanations such as these.
Yeah, I mean, the telehealth thing is hard to get used to. I mean, I
Yeah.
totally agree with you. I sit there and I'm just like, how else can I describe this to you so you can get it? So I
Yeah.
definitely get it.
Yeah, it's definitely made for an interesting challenge. To kind of piggyback on the previous two questions, relating to soccer, what is the most difficult or unique injury you've faced throughout your career so far?
Without getting into specifics, I would say it's the injury of an academy player that's either on a first team contract or on the pro academy contract, because you're not only working with the player, you're working with the parent, you're working with the pro team coach as well as the academy coaches, and they want to stay around the academy team as well, but they're also on the first team. So it really holds true of like the principles you hold as a club, to make sure everyone's on the same page and you know, managing the athlete appropriately. And so with that, it makes the direction and the instruction I got to be crystal clear in a lot of this, with no room for interpretation, because as soon as there's room for interpretation, which depending on the person, it's okay, and it's fine, the interpretation can really swing into different directions. So I think that with that being said, having the academy player that is incredible on the field, but is 15 years old, so they eat Hot Pockets and like toaster strudels, and trying to manage a professional training load, as well as having some of these injuries that when, you know, let's say a 15-year-old has an MCL sprain, if they get back into U15 soccer, U16 at the academy level, or I guess it's 15, 17s at the academy level, and they get into a tackle, that tackle with a 15-year-old versus a pro, that MCL has a very different stress level. That's anecdotal. I don't know from a research standpoint, but you'd assume so. So managing even that, so the return to play, do we return them back into the academy setting? And then where's the right amount of load to then progress them into a first team, whether it's a Galaxy with the second team or like San Antonio where it's the first team, and managing expectation, programming so clearly that everyone's on the same page, as well as involving the docs and, you know, physical therapy, whoever's on that. So it's really just managing a group of medical professionals as well as coaches to get the athlete back and focus on them as the center of the whole model.
That's super unique for sure. Definitely not something that I thought about between those multi-levels, but
yeah,
it's very interesting for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen the tib fibs and, you know, the I guess acute non-contact ACL, but it's when we're talking about challenges, Matt, that was certainly like let's take a deep breath and really settle down here and create this foundation to build from, that I found, rather than just, you know, copy and pasting from a past rehab or injury prevention program.
For sure.
I know a lot of our SATs people work in different settings. So obviously collegiate, high school, all these other things that are, with soccer. But what would you say is the biggest difference? Because you've kind of seen, the collegiate setting, the professional setting, the semi-professional setting. What would you say the biggest difference besides, the injury return to play? What would you say is some of the biggest differences that you can see in athletes or just like in your job description?
So I have two answers to that. For athletes, I think the biggest difference is their professional responsibility and expectation. That as a professional athlete, if they're finished with school, this is their job. So compared to a college where, let's do rehab at this time. Oh, wait, you have class all day, or you have the additional finals week that seems to skyrocket injury rate. You're dealing with a handful of different variables if you're at the high school level, or even high school soccer compared to academy soccer, even though it's the same age range. That's different. And then you get into the collegiate level, especially with the potential expansion of the season. There's always a variety of different things to work with. And so I think that connecting with the athlete and making sure that they're aware of like what they're up to and what they're committed to from a career standpoint. Is this just something that they're doing, to go to college? Because that's totally a potential option. Or is it something that's, getting their family out of a difficult place? And, they're the captain of their team or the captain of their family, progressing the family to that next level of life. And so knowing their why, I think, is a very big piece from a medical standpoint. The second part of the answer for that would be the exposure or awareness I've been allowed within the professional game. At San Antonio, there was myself as the head athletic trainer, and we had a high performance coach, Frank Barone, who we worked very, very well together. And then we had a director of high performance. There was kind of a triangle, Andy Thompson, and the three of us worked together as like a team. But you move to Galaxy, where we have a wide variety of professionals on the first team, performance coaches, fitness coaches, sports scientists, head athletic trainer, assistant, athletic training intern, a wide variety. And then there's myself and a performance coach with the second team. So the biggest difference, back to your question, is not being closed-minded. There are no silos in my philosophy, nor in the Galaxy way. And there's always stuff to learn. There's always, even if I know what they're talking about, it's another person speaking, so maybe they have a different perspective. So always listening with an open mind and not closing off to what people have to say, because we're all at this level and employed by the club for a reason. Because we're great at what we do. We're committed to the betterment of the club and winning games, as well as keeping athletes healthy. So just learning as we go, sports science, learning metric and GPS, that was something I had never been exposed to prior to, in American football, we had it in our jerseys, but I never saw numbers or any printouts. So you get into, San Antonio, and in conversation with Frank and Andy, it's, well, Adam, why did you choose this rehab sets and reps when we're on field running versus this? I was like, it seems like a good amount. They're like, well, what percentage is that of their on-field game load? And I was like, I have no idea. Now, I could have gotten super defensive, and I probably in hindsight was a little defensive, like, no, I'm not wrong, but realizing it's not a right or wrong, it's just a learning opportunity. And so sitting down with them and really hashing out so it didn't happen again.
Yeah, I definitely think that's good information and good advice for people. But I could definitely see that, especially in the athlete's perspective. That was a good little thing. Speaking of our SATS members, I guess a question that we have for you, and maybe something that you can shed some light on, is how can we broaden the connection between PSATs and SATs?
Awesome. So great question. It's one of those things that I think, whether it's official or not, we're athletic trainers. that are committed to growing both the career profession as well as the game of soccer. So even these conversations, have the PSATs and MLS medical symposium, if those happen this year, TBD. But I think that from a PSAT standpoint, it's even the expansion of that to include USL athletic trainers. That's in the conversation and works right now. And then from there, involving SATs in just growing the culture and growing this knowledge base. So I think that, programs or interviews, Q&As like this are great. Sharing CEUs at different opportunities. I can speak from, not from an organizational level because I'm not involved in PSAT since I am with the second team. But I can say that there's certainly conversation going on. I've spoken to PSAT's members about the involvement of the USL Championship division, the USL League One, League Two, because if we're speaking professional soccer, USL Championship and USL League One are professional. Then you get into the NPSL. Like there's a variety of different soccer leagues in the country, and that's not to write off colleges, high school athletic trainers that can totally learn from all of this. So I think that it's really a collaboration of what is PSATs up to and how can we learn and grow alongside or with them. And I say them, as I just touched on, since I'm not in the MLS. And it's conversation, it's emails, it's, utilizing this time to check in, learn from them. And, them learn from us too, right? I can certainly take some things from what you all are working at the collegiate level and the collegiate setting. There's a lot to learn. And having that open mind to grow and to collaborate moving forward, I think is amazing. And so it's just time. It's finding that time and planning ahead. So PSATs members, whether they're MLS or MLS affiliates in the second team, can connect with the USL, can connect with collegiate programs. I guess the academy is no longer a thing, so we shall see what happens with that. But it's never happened before. To close this question, it's never happened before. So we get to create whatever this next chapter of soccer athletic trainers looks like. And so it's something to not get disheartened by. So, keeping at it, I guess, and staying focused on the connection and collaboration as a whole, and realizing that as athletic trainers within the game of soccer, we can grow together.
Yeah, I definitely think having that connection, networking opportunities, and knowledge is awesome just to spread between us, because I think the more we know, the better we can represent, the profession of athletic training. So definitely agree with you there.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. Continuing on into another question about SATs, as a member, what are your thoughts overall right now? And then are there things that you'd like to see more of, or, thoughts on the direction of everything going forward? I know that's something that, Mitch is working a lot on right now and trying to use the group's ideals as a whole.
Yeah. So I can actually thank a lot of my career growth and opportunity to SATs. It was something I became aware of prior to a NATA convention. I don't remember which one, but I went to a little happy hour meeting, and that's when I believe I was in grad school, so it was either Houston or St. Louis, and realized that there are people up to great things that if I'm not involved in something like this, they, from a blinder standpoint, they don't even exist, because we're in the trenches day in and day out. So even from the Facebook group standpoint, if I'm working, doing whatever, and there's a little blurb notification of like, hey, here's an interesting research article that came out, or even the NCAA article that came out a week or two ago, or at least it was posted a week or two ago, seeing that and becoming aware and just growing in awareness of what's going on in other settings, I think can really go a long way with connecting the profession as a whole. And as well as an opportunity standpoint, my first job offer was at SMU, because of a conversation I had with Becky, which was years ago at this point, at SMU, and it turned into, a potential internship with Kevin at the helm there at that time. And so even from that, like, that came from sitting down and talking to Becky about what I was actually looking to achieve in athletic training. That soccer was something I felt was incredibly important to me, but I was in football. So how in the world do I break into not only another sport, but like, there's a whole tier system to it. And I have no clinical experience in soccer. But that wasn't a reason to sit down and, huff and puff of, oh man, I don't have any soccer experience. I went out and made it for myself. Reached out to local academies, in the high school setting during grad school. In the spring sports, there was a ton of sports going on in the high school setting. So I made sure that I was able to work with soccer and, get that hands-on experience and learn about what they're up to. Yes, so I think that it's an incredible opportunity for growth and possibility, really, in the game of soccer for athletic training students to find those internships that you all are in now, finding conversations and collaboration between everything.
Very good. Thank you. I think that's, something that you bring up that's a really good point, is just trying to make the most of it for yourself. And it definitely, joining in on this organization like this past winter, it was definitely like what you said, there's just a lot of, little things that people just post because they're interesting, but
Yeah.
There can be more development, once we have these conferences again and, stuff like that, and we kind of return to some sense of normalcy. But, those are all really good points. Thank you.
Adam, is there any areas of athletic training that you interest you specifically, or any CEUs or certifications that you found helpful with your career and, jumping from place to place?
Good question. I don't think there's a right answer to that. I think that everyone's different. So for me personally, I took the structure and function foundations to dry needling course. That to me was very relevant and integratable into what I was doing at San Antonio. Oftentimes there's a lot of big shiny CEUs that people like to do. And I find that if I were to go out and learn that technique or whatever it is, am I actually able to implement it? Or is it something that I, spent hundreds of dollars on? Sure, I got the CEU so I can, stay certified, but is it actually implementable? And so that's where I think a very important piece in my decision making is, whether it's just MedBridge and having the freedom to just tune in and watch something that is really, I'm like dropping names here. It's something that's going to allow you to grow in a variety of things. Is setting up the height of a stationary bike, right? At first glance, it's not a pretty seminar by any means, but that's something that you will literally use every single day, multiple times a day, for a player coming back from rehab, or let's say they're in an immobilization knee brace and they're only given 30 or 60 degrees of knee range. Those are things that are implementable. So actually, while working with the Galaxy, it's been awesome to know that whatever is like a hot topic, I still am speaking to our head athletic trainers, Cesar Roldan and Phil, about, okay, I may go and do this. Can we even actually use it? Or is it something I'm just going to have in my closet for away games, that I can pack in my bag and move for? So it's BFR, something that, can we use it for injury prevention or maintenance, not just post-injury? As I said, needling, ART, things that we can actually utilize. And a lot of it comes from just conversation and collaboration of the people around you at your setting. If there's someone at Denver or Texas Tech that does dry needling, you may not need to go get dry needle certified, because it may not be tremendously implementable in where you are, and there may be someone already doing it. So can you add another tool or another, bite-sized piece of wisdom into your program, and seeing where you can actually grow with that?
Yeah, I definitely think, especially right now, there's a lot of people throwing out CEUs like, oh, this CEU for only $50 online. And it's like, you look at them and you're like, what am I going to do with that? So definitely good advice there.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was that's, you know, I think that's like what Wafaa said. You know, there's so much going on right now that it's just like you have to pick and choose what you can actually in turn apply to your practice rather than just do it and never use it. So very, very implementable advice for sure.
And here's the thing about the time that we're currently in. This is an opportunity to notice where my attention span went. Right? I wake up and I'm not going into work at 7 a.m. and leaving at 5 p.m. So there's like, man, I could get this done now, or I could get this done later. Am I going to work out an hour later? And it really put me back into that, like, what am I actually looking to accomplish during this time? For CEUs, for, you know, collaboration within the medical and performance staff, with coaches, with the players. You know, if you just wake up and let the days fly by and let life run your life, it's tough, and it's going to be tough to get back into it. So it's staying focused and on top of everything, as you touched on, Matt, and being really intentional about what we're doing at this time with our learning and growth in our careers.
All very true. You know, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. A lot of your answers were very informative, and you have a lot of good feedback. So thank you for your time this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Both of you are you know, trailblazers and really taking ownership of both the SATS as well as your own careers. And I would have loved to be an athlete that you all work with.
Thank you, Adam. We appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, great. Thank you all.
Awesome.